I was 15 the year it happened. It was 2016, and my family had just moved to a little river town in southern Illinois called Brookfield Landing. Population maybe 3,000, if you counted the stray dogs. It was the kind of place where everybody's grandma still left pies on their neighbor's porch. But the high school was falling apart, and the only thing open past 9 p.m. was the McDonald's off Highway 52. The McDonald's became my sister Emily's second home. She was 17, a senior, and had been begging for a job the moment we unpacked the U-Haul. Dad said yes immediately. We needed the money, and besides, she had this stubborn streak where she'd rather work than ask anyone for help. We'd moved here because Dad, Greg, got laid off from a warehouse job outside Chicago. Mom, Denise, picked up evening shifts cleaning offices in the next county over. We were crammed into this single-story rental house at the end of a cracked cul-de-sac. 4 of us, Dad, Mom, Emily, and me, Tyler, plus our dog, Scout. The house wasn't terrible, but it had quirks. You could feel every step creak under the carpet. The windows were old enough that condensation dripped between the panes on cold mornings. And then there was the basement. Calling it a basement was generous. It was more like a dirt cellar that someone had tried to half-finish decades ago. Bare bulbs hung from wires, and there was one of those heavy wooden doors with a thick sliding bolt on the outside, like you'd see in a barn. The landlord, a guy named Mr. Holbrook, had warned Dad, "Bolt stays shut. Don't keep anything down there. You need to get often." He'd said it with this flat, final tone like there was no room for questions. I asked Dad later, "Why's it bolted from the outside?" He shrugged. "Probably critters, or some paranoid old guy lived here before us. Don't worry about it." But I did worry about it. The first 2 months in Brookfield Landing were slow. School was small enough that everyone already had their friend groups. I mostly kept to myself, playing guitar in my room. Emily, though, was always moving. School, work, then home, late smelling like fries and hash browns. One night in February, it's dead of winter, a storm knocked the power out for a couple hours. We lit candles and sat in the living room, listening to the wind scrape branches against the siding. Emily told us some story about a customer at McDonald's who came in every night at the same time, ordered exactly the same thing, and never spoke more than a few words. "What's his deal?" I asked. "No idea," she said. "He just watches people. Like his eyes don't wander. They stick. Creepy as hell." Dad chuckled. Small towns have their characters. But the way Emily's voice had tightened made me think she wasn't exaggerating. About a week later it happened. I woke up around 2:40 a.m. to Scout whining in the hallway. He never barked unless someone knocked, but this was that restless, low whine he made when something felt off. I got up, pulled on a hoodie, and shuffled toward the kitchen to check his water bowl. That's when I heard it, a soft tick, tick, tick against the sliding glass door that led to the backyard. The hair on my arms stood up. I moved slowly, staying just out of the moonlight spilling across the linoleum. My heart was pounding before I even looked. A man was standing outside. His clothes were dirty, not just from a day's work, but layered grime, like he'd been wearing the same thing for weeks. He had a baseball cap pulled low and a beard that looked matted. He was just staring inside, not scanning the room, not moving, just staring. I froze. Then in one slow motion, he raised his hand and tapped the glass again. Tick. Scout let out a low growl. I wanted to back away, but I couldn't make my legs move. Then came the sound that turned my blood to ice. The back door handle turned, and then, click, it unlocked. I stumbled backwards so hard I hit the counter. The door slid open just enough for him to step inside like he'd done it 1,000 times. He didn't even glance at me. He just walked, straight through the kitchen, toward the basement door. And here's the part that made my skin crawl for years after. Without hesitating, he reached up, slid the bolt back, and opened it. I don't know why, but my voice wouldn't work. I ducked into the hallway and bolted for Emily's room. She was asleep, her McDonald's visor still on the desk. I shook her. "Emily, there's someone." She sat up fast. "What?" "There's a guy in the kitchen. He just went downstairs before I could finish." We heard the basement door creak shut. Emily grabbed her phone, but I stopped her. Don't call yet. Dad will. But then we heard it. Footsteps coming back up. Emily's eyes went wide. We both moved at the same time, sprinting to the kitchen. I slammed the bolt across the basement door just as the steps hit the top. Boom. He slammed into it once, hard enough to shake the wall. Scout was barking now, wild. Emily whispered, "Tyler, call Dad." "He's at work," I said. My voice cracked. She didn't hesitate. She called 911. The rest happened in a blur. The man didn't try to break the door again. We heard him moving downstairs, maybe pacing. Then Dad's headlights swung into the driveway. He must have sped home after Emily texted. He came in like a storm, crowbar in hand. "Where?" "Basement," Emily said. "He had a key." "A key?" Dad barked. Before he could do anything else, police sirens wailed down the street. 2 officers came in, guns drawn. When they went into the basement, I expected a fight. Instead, silence. A minute later, one of them called up, "You're going to want to see this." The man was gone. The only things down there: a worn sleeping bag, empty McDonald's bags and cups, half a gallon of water, and a crumpled receipt from Emily's McDonald's, dated 4 nights ago. The weirdest part? The police found an identical copy of our back door key tucked inside the sleeping bag. Dad swore he'd changed the locks when we moved in. We'd never given a spare to anyone. The police ran fingerprints. Nothing, no record. No ID. We moved within the week. Emily quit her job. And to this day, I double-check every lock before bed. But the thing that keeps me up? Sometimes I think about how quietly he came in. Like it wasn't the first time. Like maybe for weeks before that night, he'd been coming and going, eating our food, watching us sleep, and we never knew. Story 2. I didn't think that day would stick with me this long. It started like nothing. The kind of Saturday you live 100 times and forget about. It was September 14th, my senior year at Ridgeview High in Lincoln Falls, Illinois. The kind of small Midwestern city that feels too big to be called a town, but too small to be called a city. Everyone knew everyone, but not in a friendly way. More in the "I know your mom's maiden name and your GP" a way. That morning I'd been at rehearsal for our fall theater showcase. I wasn't even in a big role, just background parts, a few lines, and the job of moving furniture between scenes. Our drama club met in the old gym because the auditorium was being renovated, which really meant they'd run out of funding halfway through fixing the lights. Rehearsal dragged. Mr. Andrews, our director, kept stopping us mid-line to find the truth in the moment, which sounded deep until you realized it meant, "Say that again, but louder." By the time he called lunch break, my head felt heavy and my stomach was growling loud enough to echo. That's when Caleb turned to me. Caleb Morris, my best friend since 6th grade. The guy who could make ordering coffee sound like a comedy routine. He was wearing his usual faded baseball cap and a sweatshirt that had more paint stains than fabric. He grinned and said, "Ethan, you feeling a McDonald's run?" There was one just 8 minutes down Easton Boulevard. The Golden Arches were basically a high school landmark, a place we went after football games, after late-night study sessions, or when someone's car broke down in the parking lot and we had nothing better to do. I thought about the turkey sandwich I had in my backpack, probably warm by now. "Yeah," I said. "I could inhale a quarter-pounder right now." We piled into Caleb's old silver Corolla, the one with a permanent rattle when you hit 40 and a cracked dashboard that looked like the desert floor. The windows rolled down just enough to let in the early fall air, that mix of fading summer heat in the first bite of autumn. We cranked the music. Some old rock playlist Caleb swore was good driving music. I leaned my head back, let the wind hit my face, and for the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about college applications, or the geometry test I'd bombed, or the fact that my parents hadn't spoken a full sentence to each other in 3 days. We pulled into the McDonald's lot at 12:17 p.m. I remember because Caleb joked that we should treasure these golden minutes before the lunch rush apocalypse. From the outside, it looked like any other Saturday. A couple of cars in the drive-thru, a family with 2 little kids leaving with happy meals. No warning signs, no reason to think this lunch would be different. We went in through the main entrance. The blast of air conditioning hit first and Caleb groaned dramatically. Sweet mercy, I'm never leaving this place. We joined the short line. Ahead of us, an older man in a flannel shirt, maybe late 60s, with the kind of permanent frown lines you get from decades of disappointment. Behind him, a younger guy, mid-20s maybe, wearing a charcoal hoodie, loose black sweatpants, and worn-out sneakers. At first, I didn't pay much attention to him. He had a small brown paper bag in one hand and was scrolling through his phone with the other. But after a moment, I noticed something. He wasn't looking at the menu. He kept lifting his head, eyes sweeping the restaurant in slow, deliberate scans. There's a certain kind of glance that's different from normal people watching. It's heavier. Like the eyes aren't just seeing, they're weighing, measuring. His gaze lingered on tables, on doors, on people. I leaned toward Caleb. You see that guy? Caleb followed my eyes. What about him? Dunno. Something's off. Before Caleb could answer, the guy stepped out of line and walked toward the side door, the one by the corner booth, opposite from where we stood. It was one of those doors customers rarely used, the kind that squeaks because no one ever oils the hinges. He opened it halfway, looked back into the restaurant, and for just a second, our eyes locked. It wasn't just a look. It was a pause, like he wanted to remember my face. Then he stepped outside. We moved up in line, ordered 2 quarter-pounders, large fries, and Caleb's inevitable Oreo McFlurry. We grabbed our tray and, of course, Caleb pointed to the corner booth right by that same side door. You sure about sitting there? I asked. What? Best view in the house. I hesitated but followed. I sat facing the windows, Caleb with his back to them. That's when I noticed it, a red mountain bike leaning against the wall just outside. It hadn't been there when we arrived. I tried to shake it off. People ride bikes here. It's nothing. But then I looked up. He was back, standing outside the window, not moving, not blinking, staring, not at me, at Caleb. His eyes, bloodshot, yellow at the corners, had this animal shine. The brown paper bag was now slung over his shoulder, and through the gap in his unzipped hoodie, I saw it. The black grip of a machete handle. My stomach dropped. My voice came out low and tight. Caleb, don't turn around. What? There's a guy outside. He's watching you. He's got a machete. Caleb froze, burger halfway to his mouth. What? Don't look. He's right behind you, outside the glass. Caleb set the burger down slowly. What do we do? I don't know. The guy didn't move. His breath fogged the glass. Then with deliberate slowness, he walked around the side of the building and disappeared from view. I scanned the opposite windows. A few seconds later, there he was again, pressed against the far glass, still staring, still smiling, still with that weapon handle poking out like it belonged there. My knees felt hollow. I stood, walked to the counter, and quietly told the cashier, a college-age guy, "There's a man outside with a weapon. He's been watching us through the windows." The kid blinked. Okay, I'll tell the manager." Back at the booth, Caleb's jaw was tight. "He's not doing anything?" "Nope. We need to wait. Stay calm." I pulled out my phone, pretending to take a picture of Caleb. He caught on instantly, making a goofy face, while I angled the shot to catch the man in the background. Machete handle, clear as day. I showed the picture to a woman with 2 young kids at a nearby table. Her eyes went wide. She pulled her children close. Soon others noticed. A quiet ripple of fear moved through the room. And then, he was gone again. "Maybe he left," Caleb whispered. I wasn't convinced. I called 911. While I was still on the line, movement caught my eye. He emerged from behind the dumpster enclosure, walking straight toward the side door by our table. 5 feet away, he stopped, looked right at us. Then, almost casually, he turned, walked to the red bike, and pedaled off. Slow, like he wanted us to watch. The dispatcher told us to stay put. The police arrived 12 minutes later. They looked at the photo, took our statements, and told us something that made my skin crawl. He hadn't technically broken any laws. Unless he'd brandished the weapon or stepped inside, there wasn't much they could charge him with. They said they'd searched the area. They didn't find him. We left silent for a long time. When Caleb finally spoke, his voice was thin. "What the hell was that?" We laughed. The kind of laugh you do when you're not okay. That was a year ago. I still have the picture. And sometimes when I stop at McDonald's, I catch myself looking out the window, wondering if he's out there, watching someone else now. Story 3, I was 12 the summer it happened. Back then, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in the southeast corner of Phoenix, Arizona. It wasn't the nice, manicured part of the city you see on postcards. Our street was sun-cracked asphalt, faded paint, and half-dead palm trees that rattled like bones whenever the wind blew. My mom worked nights cleaning offices, my dad drove a delivery truck, and my older brother Marcus was 17, tall, sarcastic, and forever convinced he knew more about the world than anyone else. Marcus wasn't just my brother, he was the gravity in my little universe. If Marcus said something was cool, I believed it without question. If Marcus told me a shortcut was safe, I'd follow him without looking twice. And if Marcus decided we were going somewhere, I'd be right behind him, no matter what. It was late July, the kind of day where the heat sticks to your skin like glue, and the air feels heavy enough to drink. We had spent most of the morning inside swapping turns on the PlayStation until a sudden power outage cut us off mid-game. The box fan in our living room died with a groan, leaving us in a thick, sweaty silence. Marcus tossed the controller on the couch. "Forget this," he said, grabbing his wallet. "Let's go to the McDonald's on Valencia. 10 minutes on foot, air conditioning blasting, and I've still got a couple bucks left." I didn't need convincing. Our apartment was an oven, and McDonald's wasn't just food. It was a reprieve, a little glass-walled miracle of cold air and bright light in the middle of our sunburned neighborhood. We cut through alleys and side streets, the soles of our sneakers sticking to the pavement. Marcus always took the back way, climbing low chain-link fences and weaving between houses, like the sidewalks were too slow for him. That's how we ended up walking past it. The building sat behind a rusted fence, half hidden by wild mesquite trees. Its walls were pale, peeling concrete, covered in layers of faded graffiti. The windows were long, rectangular slits, most of them shattered. A warped metal sign on the roof read, "Desert Wholesale" in sun-bleached letters. I'd seen it before, but always from a distance. "Don't look too long," Marcus muttered without slowing down. "Why?" I asked. He glanced at me. His voice was flat. "Place is bad news. People around here don't mess with it." I snorted. "Why? Rats? Mold?" Marcus didn't laugh. "You remember Joey from Mom's church? His cousin and some friends snuck in there a couple years ago. Never came out. Cops found their bikes leaning against the fence. No footprints going back out." I frowned. "What about inside?" "They went in," Marcus said, "and so did one of the cops. He didn't make it to the second floor. Came out screaming, bleeding from the mouth." I opened my mouth to ask more, but Marcus cut me off. "Don't. Just don't." The rest of the walk, I kept my eyes on the sidewalk. The McDonald's was freshly remodeled, bright, spotless, and buzzing with the smell of hot oil and salty fries. We ordered one large meal and a chocolate sundae to split, grabbing the booth by the window because that's what Marcus always did. I was halfway through my fries when I glanced outside. The building wasn't far, maybe 50 yards away, across the cracked parking lot of a shuttered laundromat. Through one of its broken upper windows, something moved. At first I thought it was the heat shimmering, or maybe a pigeon flapping past. But then I saw it again. Not movement, shape. Two shapes. They stood side by side, filling the jagged frame of the window. My stomach went cold before I could even figure out why. "Marcus," I whispered. "Look." He leaned forward, his jaw tightening as he followed my gaze. They weren't right. Both figures were tall, their bodies round and hunched like overstuffed sacks. Their skin was a grayish, blistered texture, stretched in unnatural ways over swollen torsos. Their arms, if you could call them that, hung stiffly, ending in long, uneven points instead of hands. Their heads sat too low on their shoulders, and their mouths were wide, jagged splits, as though someone had carved them open with a dull blade. And their eyes burned red, not glowing like a flashlight, more like dying embers, pulsing faintly with each second. They didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. One of them tilted its head. The other's mouth twitched upward. I dropped my fry. Marcus muttered something under his breath and stood up. "Come on," he said. "We're leaving." We walked fast, cutting down a side street until the building was out of sight. I could feel my skin crawling like I'd stepped into a freezer. "You saw them too, right?" I asked. Marcus didn't look at me. "Yeah, I saw years passed. I turned 16, then 18. I got a job at a garage on the other side of the city. Marcus moved out, then I did. We never talked about that day, but I never forgot it. The memory sat in the back of my mind like a rusted nail you can't pull out. I didn't see the building again until last November. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and I was back visiting my mom. After dinner, I stepped out to the porch for some air. Mrs. Flores, our elderly neighbor, was sitting in her lawn chair with a cigarette. "You remember that old desert wholesale place?" she asked suddenly, nodding toward the street. My throat went dry. "Yeah, what about it?" "You know why it's empty?" she said, leaning closer. I shook my head. She took a drag, exhaled. "Because back in '78, when it was a canning plant, two brothers worked the night shift. They were new to the country. Boss barely paid them, kept them locked inside to finish orders. One night, they didn't clock out. Found them in the upstairs office, hung from the rafters. They left a message on the wall, written in something thick, black. People said it wasn't paint." "What happened to it after?" I asked. "No one bought it," she said simply. "Not even for storage. Some folks say they've seen the brothers in the window at night, just standing there waiting, like they're looking for someone to take their place." I didn't tell her I'd seen them. I didn't tell her that Marcus had too. I didn't tell her about the way their mouths had twitched like they almost recognized us. That night, I dug out an old sketch pad from my closet. On the last page was a pencil drawing I'd forgotten about. The cracked building, the broken window, the two figures, their burning eyes. I hadn't drawn it from imagination. I'd drawn it from memory. I haven't walked past that Macdonald's since, but sometimes, driving home at night, I'll catch myself glancing in my rearview mirror. And for a split second, I swear I see them in the reflection, still standing, still watching, and I think about Mrs. Flores' words, waiting. Story 4. I never planned on working at McDonald's. It wasn't part of any grand career plan or dream job list. It was just supposed to be temporary. I was 19, stuck in my small hometown of Brookford, Indiana, after my first year of community college didn't exactly go as planned. Tuition was expensive, my grades were average at best, and my part-time gig at a local bookstore wasn't cutting it. I needed more hours, more money, and something that wouldn't require me to wear a tie or pretend to care about office politics. McDonald's was a 5-minute drive from my apartment. I'd driven past it 1,000 times without ever really noticing it. But one rainy afternoon in August, I saw the "now hiring all shifts" sign in the window and figured, why not? The Brookford McDonald's was the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened. It sat at the edge of town, just before the long stretch of highway that led to cornfields and darkness. The gas station across the street closed at 10, the strip mall next door had been half empty for years, and the parking lot lights always had a faint flicker, like they couldn't quite decide if they were on or off. My first week was awkward, like any new job, but the crew was friendly enough. Derek, 24, grill cook, sarcastic in a way that made you laugh, even when you wanted to be annoyed. Maya, 21, drive-through superstar, could take 4 orders at once while gossiping without missing a beat. Harper, 30, shift manager, tough but protective, like the older sister you didn't want to disappoint. Luis, 19, just started like me, shy, always triple-checking his work. Harper was the first to warn me about the Friday night shifts. "It gets weird," she said, not making eye contact as she counted the drawer. "Weird how?" I asked. "You'll see." I thought she meant rowdy teenagers or drunk customers. I wish that's all it had been. It was my second Friday on the job. The lobby closed at 11 p.m., But the drive-thru stayed open until midnight. Around 10:50, I was wiping tables when I saw someone standing outside the glass doors. A man, tall, too thin, wearing a pale green raincoat. His hair was slicked down like he'd just stepped out of a shower, but it wasn't raining. He was facing the door but not moving. No knocking, no gesturing, just there. "Customer?" Luis asked, walking by with a mop bucket. "Lobby's closed," I said. "He's just standing there." Luis took a look. "That's creepy." We both laughed it off and went back to work. When I glanced up again, he was gone. For the next few weeks, nothing happened. I started to think Harper's warning was just about how slow time feels when you're cleaning at midnight. Then came the night in mid-September. We were short-handed, just me, Derek, and Harper, and we'd been slammed with drive-through orders because a high school football game had just ended. By 11:15, the lot was empty, the fryers were off, and we were just waiting for the last few cars. That's when Harper came out from the office and said, "Did either of you unlock the lobby door?" "No," Derek said without looking up from the grill. "Well, it's unlocked now," she said. We all froze. She walked to the door, pushed it open, then locked it again. I tried to make a joke. "Maybe the ghost of Ronald McDonald wants a Big Mac." Harper didn't laugh. The shift that burned itself into my memory happened on a Saturday in late October. It was cold enough to see your breath outside, but no snow yet. The kind of night where the wind rattles the windows and makes you feel like you're being watched. The crew was small again. Me, Maya, Luis, and Harper. The lobby had just closed, and we were halfway through cleaning when Maya's voice came through the headset. Table 12 just got up." Luis frowned. "What?" "The lobby's closed." "I know," she said, her voice tight. "But I swear, I just saw someone sitting there. Long black hair. They stood up and walked out of view." We went to check. The lobby was empty. Chairs stacked, floor half mopped. But there, on table 12, was a half-full cup of Coke. Condensation still fresh. Around 11:40, I was restocking the sauce packets when I heard footsteps in the back hallway near the freezer. Slow, deliberate, not rushed. I assumed it was Harper doing inventory, but when I peeked around the corner, the hallway was empty. "Maya, are you in the back?" I called. "Nope, up here," she replied over the headset. "Harper?" "In the office," she called back. "Luis!" He poked his head out from the dish pit. "What?" I didn't say anything else. We were just minutes from closing the drive-thru when it happened. The front door, locked, bolted, and double-checked by Harper, swung open. A gust of cold air rushed in, carrying a smell like damp earth and something faintly metallic. Standing there was the man in the green raincoat. Behind him, a second figure, shorter, hood pulled low, face hidden. They stepped inside without speaking. Their shoes made no sound on the tile. "Sir, the lobby's closed," Harper said, stepping forward. Her voice was calm but firm. The man tilted his head slightly, then spoke in a flat, almost mechanical tone. "We've been here before," Luis muttered under his breath. "Nope, nope, nope." "You'll have to go through the drive-thru," Harper said. The hooded one finally looked up. Her skin was wrong, too pale, too smooth, like it had been stretched over something that wasn't bone. Her eyes were so dark they looked bottomless. "You let us in last time," she said. And then the lights went out. The emergency lights flickered on, casting the lobby in a faint red glow. The two figures were gone. But in the far corner, near the soda machine, something crouched. It was tall even while hunched over, its skin glistening like it was wet. Its head twitched in short, jerky movements, like it was trying to orient itself. I couldn't breathe. None of us could. It straightened slowly, and that's when I realized its mouth wasn't a mouth. It was just a long, vertical slit that opened all the way down its neck. We ran. Harper shoved us into the walk-in freezer and slammed the door. The lock wasn't supposed to engage from the outside, but when she tried to open it a few minutes later, it wouldn't budge. That's when we heard it, the McDonald's jingle, but slowed down, distorted, playing over the ceiling speakers inside the freezer. Luis started praying in Spanish. Maya was crying. Harper just kept her hand on the handle, like she was waiting for the right moment. After what felt like hours, the lights in the freezer flickered, then the handle gave way. We stepped out into silence. The lobby was exactly as we left it, except for one thing. On the touch-screen kiosk by the register, written in what looked like barbecue sauce, were the words, "We're still hungry." The security cameras showed nothing. No man in a green raincoat, no hooded figure, no creature. Just static from 11:36 to 11:48. We all quit the next day. That was over a year ago. The Brookford McDonald's still operates. New crew, new manager. Sometimes when I drive past late at night, I see two figures standing just inside the lobby. One in a green raincoat, one with a hood, and they're always facing the glass, always waiting. Story 5. I was 19 the first time I realized something could be wrong with a place, not just the people in it. My name's Casey Morgan, and back in the winter of 2011, I was working part-time at the McDonald's just off Route 51 in Pinefield, Colorado. Pinefield was one of those towns you could miss if you blinked while driving through. A main street with a gas station, a Dollar General, two diners that hadn't changed their menus since the 80s, and the McDonald's where I pulled shifts to help pay for community college. It was mid-December, the kind of bitter cold where the air feels metallic when you breathe it in, and snow had been sitting on the ground for weeks, dirty, compacted, crusted over with ice. That Monday had been a slow day, and I was closing. I'd been at it since 4 in the afternoon and wasn't scheduled to clock out until midnight. The crew that night was small. Our manager Denise was in her early 30s, a single mom who somehow managed to run the store with one hand while texting with the other. In the kitchen, we had Marco, who was always singing Spanish ballads while flipping burgers, and Kara in drive-thru, fast-talking, sarcastic, and perpetually chewing gum. The store itself wasn't big, just one long counter, a row of booths on the left side, and that weird underlit party room in the back that no one used anymore because corporate had declared it out of service after a roof leak the year before. The door stayed locked most days, though the key hung from a hook in the manager's office. That night had started like any other. I came in early, ate a McChicken in the break room while scrolling through my phone, and clocked in. By 8:30, we'd served maybe 6 customers in the last hour. Outside, the snow kept falling in lazy spirals under the street lamps. I was wiping down the self-serve drink station when the door chimed. 2 women stepped inside. At first, I thought they were in costume for some holiday event. Both wore long black dresses that went all the way to their ankles with high lace collars and fitted sleeves. The fabric had that heavy, old-world look, like something out of a century-old photograph. One wore her hair in a severe bun. The other had a braid that fell over her shoulder. Their skin was pale, almost colorless, like it hadn't seen the sun in years. Neither smiled. Neither spoke. Denise looked up from behind the counter, her hands stalling over the register. "Evening," she said, her voice catching slightly. "Dine in or to go?" They didn't answer. They just stood there, not looking at us but past us, toward the back of the store. I glanced at Kara, who had peeked her head out from the drive-through window. She mouthed, "What the hell?" The silence felt wrong. Not awkward. Wrong. Like the air had gone heavy. I tried to break it. Can I help you guys with—" The woman with the braid tilted her head in my direction. When she spoke, her voice was unnervingly even, like it had been smoothed of any emotion. "Is your manager here?" Denise stepped forward. "That's me. What's going on?" The woman in the bun spoke this time, in the same calm tone. "We've come to collect what was owed." Marco leaned out from the kitchen window. "'Kay," he muttered, frowning. Denise gave a forced laugh. "I think you've got the wrong place. This is a McDonald's." The 2 women didn't respond. They started walking, no, gliding, toward the hallway that led to the locked party room. Their shoes made no sound on the tile. "Hey," Denise called. "That's off limits." They didn't stop. Something cold brushed past me as they passed, like standing in front of an open freezer door. The hair on my arm stood up under my uniform. I followed, not because I wanted to, but because my legs moved on their own. When they reached the party room door, The padlock just clicked open. Denise hadn't touched it. The women pushed the door inward. The smell of mildew and stale air drifted out, mixed with something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. Inside, the room was dark except for a single flickering fluorescent overhead. Dust coated the floor, undisturbed. But the far wall, the one that used to have the Ronald McDonald birthday mural, was smeared, the colors warped and clawed at, like someone had raked their nails through the paint. The women walked to the center of the room, facing each other. And then, they were gone. No fading, no smoke. One moment they were there, the next the space between them was empty. Denise swore under her breath, slammed the door shut, and locked it again. Nobody says a word about this, got it? But of course we did talk. In the break room, Kara told us about something she'd seen when she first started. A black and white photo in a box of old store junk. Two women, arm in arm, wearing those exact dresses. The photo had been labeled Holloway House Hotel, opening day, 1911. This was a hotel, I asked. Before the McDonald's, Kara said. They tore it down after a fire. Supposedly, two sisters died in it. Marco shook his head. Weird, man. I don't mess with that stuff. When I got home that night, I told myself it was stress, a trick of the light. But the next morning, my little sister, who hadn't heard a word about my shift, told me she'd seen two ladies standing in our driveway just before sunrise. They wanted to come inside, she said, but they said they were waiting for someone to give them what they were promised. And that's when I realized some debts don't stay buried, not even under a golden arch McDonald's. Story 6, I was 14 the year it happened. Old enough to think I had the world figured out, but still young enough to believe nothing truly bad could happen in a town like mine. My name's Ethan Mercer, and back in the fall of 2016, I lived in Brookhaven, a small place tucked in northern Pennsylvania where everybody knew everyone. And nothing much happened beyond football games, bake sales, and gossip about who got caught drinking at the quarry. Brookhaven was the kind of town where the loudest noise at night came from crickets and the occasional semi-down on Route 43. Safe, predictable. Until that rainy Thursday night in late October, when my mom suggested we pick up dinner from the new McDonald's at Exit 12. We'd had a McDonald's in town before, but it was small, old, and smelled like fryer oil no matter where you sat. They tore it down the year prior, and for months, people in Brookhaven buzzed about the new one being built just off the highway. This wasn't just any McDonald's. 2 floors, a glass front play place, bright LED menu boards, and booths with USB ports. For our town, it might as well have been Times Square. It had been pouring since noon that Thursday. Dad was on the late shift at the paper mill, so it was just Mom and me. She didn't feel like cooking, and I didn't feel like arguing. We pulled into the lot just after 6. Rain pooled in shallow puddles under the yellow parking lines. Inside, warmth and noise wrapped around us. Kids laughing in the play place, the fryer's hiss, the smell of fries and burgers drifting through the air. Outside, cars roared past on the wet highway, and that's when I saw him. He was sitting alone in a booth near the far window, back to the glass, hands folded on the table. Tall, uncomfortably tall. Even sitting down, his frame seemed stretched. He wore a long, dark overcoat and a charcoal-colored fedora, tilted low enough to shadow most of his face. In front of him sat a small coffee cup, untouched. I don't know why I noticed him. Maybe it was because he didn't move. Not to sip his coffee, not to glance at his phone. Just still. Watching. Mom, you want nuggets or a burger? Me. Nuggets. Sprite. Mom, all right, go grab a booth. I'll order. I chose a booth halfway across the dining area, angled so I could see him without being obvious. At least, I thought I wasn't obvious. Every time I glanced up, his head seemed slightly turned toward me. Not all the way. Just enough to make me feel seen. Mom joined me a few minutes later with a tray, scrolling through her phone. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the sky glowed a strange, deep orange against the darkening clouds. Me. Weird light out there. Mom, glancing up briefly. Storm's probably clearing. Eat before it gets cold. I tried, But even between bites, I kept checking. He was still there, still staring. That night, I dreamed I was back at that McDonald's, only it was empty, silent. The lights overhead flickered, buzzing faintly. Tables and chairs stood like frozen mannequins. I stood near the counter, heart hammering for no reason I could name. And then he stepped into view. No coat, no hat. His skin was the color of paper, smooth and featureless where his face should have been. His arms were too long, hanging low at his sides like heavy ropes. He stood in the hallway leading to the bathrooms, blocking the way out. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. His head tilted slowly, like he was studying me without eyes, and he started forward. One slow, deliberate step after another. I turned and bolted for the play place, but it was wrong. The slides twisted into shapes that couldn't exist, bending into blackness. My feet pounded against the plastic floor. Behind me, his footsteps grew louder. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. It was 2:17 a.m. The red digits of my alarm clock burned into the dark. I sat up, trying to shake off the dream, when the smoke alarm in the hallway erupted. Dad, from their room. "What the hell?" Thuds. Footsteps. My parents rushed out with flashlights, checking every room. No smoke, no smell, no reason for the alarm. It took Dad almost a minute to reset it. When they came back, I was sitting on the edge of my bed, clutching my blanket. "Mom, you okay?" Me. "I had a nightmare about that guy at McDonald's." Mom. "What guy?" I didn't answer. How could I explain it without sounding insane? The next day was Friday. I skipped dinner plans with friends and stayed home. Every time I passed a window, I felt like eyes were on me. At one point, I peeked through the blinds and thought I saw someone across the street by the lamppost. Tall, still, watching. By the time I blinked, he was gone. That evening, Dad offered to pick up dinner. Me. "Anywhere but that McDonald's." Dad, raising an eyebrow. "Why not?" "You love their nuggets." Me. "Just not there. Please." We ended up at Burger King. That night, I stayed up late with my DS, playing Mario Kart under the glow of my desk lamp. Around midnight, the air in my room turned freezing, visible breath in the dark. The hallway light flicked on by itself. Footsteps, software deliberate. They stopped right outside my door. I held my breath. My hand shook so badly I dropped the DS. The door creaked open. I screamed. My parents burst in seconds later, but the hallway was empty. The alarms never went off again. The lights stopped flickering. I went back to sleeping in my own bed, though I left the hallway light on every night. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling I'd brought something home from Exit 12. In 2019, I heard that McDonald's closed for renovations. It never reopened. Rumors spread, employees quitting after seeing a tall man in the bathroom hallway, a child disappearing in the play place for 20 minutes and later found trembling under a slide. I never went back. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up to that same stillness from the dream, like the air is holding its breath. And I swear I see a tall shadow in the crack of my doorway, just standing there, waiting. Story 7, I was 8 years old the first time I saw him. Not in a dream, not in a movie, not in the shadow of a coat on a hook. I mean, really saw him. My name is Lauren, and I grew up in a small suburb in Ohio called Maple Crest. We weren't rich. Dad worked double shifts at a tire factory, Mom ran the register at a hardware store, and my older cousin Daniel babysat me most nights when they both had late hours. Life was ordinary enough, school, homework, riding bikes in the cul-de-sac, until those nights started at the McDonald's on Sycamore Road. If you've never been to Maple Crest, let me paint it for you. A town where nothing much happens, where the grocery store still closes at 9, where everyone knows which house used to be the old funeral home. Safe, familiar, or at least it looked that way from the outside. In 2007, the Sycamore Road McDonald's was the biggest one in town, and to a kid, the play place was basically a castle. A 2-story maze of bright plastic tunnels, faded foam pads, a ball pit that smelled faintly of ketchup, and those big bubble windows you could press your face against to look down at the world. To grown-ups, it was just a place to burn a half hour. To us, it was an entire universe. Daniel was 16, more interested in texting his girlfriend than watching me. So most nights after my happy meal, he'd wave me toward the play place. Go burn some energy, Laura. I'll be right here. His right here was always the same corner booth, soda in one hand, phone in the other. It was early November when things began. The air outside was damp and cold, leaves plastered to the sidewalks, and the McDonald's was practically empty except for us and a man in the far corner with a newspaper. The play place felt different that night. The air inside the tunnels wasn't just warm, it was thick, stuffy enough to make me blink hard when I crawled in. I was halfway through the yellow tube when I heard it. Lauren! Drawn out, high-pitched but not like a kid. More like someone trying to be a kid. I froze. Who's there? I called. My voice bounced around the plastic, swallowed by the hum of the restaurant beyond the glass. Nothing. I crawled on, heart thudding, and reached one of those round bubble windows. Pressed my face to it. From here I could see Daniel tapping at his phone. The man with the newspaper was gone. And then, right in my ear. Pick. Sharp, almost like the squeak of wet rubber. I jerked backwards so hard I smacked my head on the tunnel wall. My knees stung against the scuffed plastic. Stop it, I yelled, my voice cracking. Something scraped inside the tunnel ahead of me. Pick-a! I backed up, crawling as fast as I could until I dropped down the spiral slide. Daniel didn't even notice at first. I had to grab his sleeve and stammer out what I'd heard. He rolled his eyes. Probably some kid hiding in there. You're fine. I didn't go back in that night. It might have ended there, but it didn't. The next week, Mom's shift ran late, so Daniel brought me again. The Sycamore McDonald's was busier this time. Families, kids screaming, the fryer beeping. And I thought, okay, it can't be scary with this many people here. But it was. Even with kids laughing in other parts of the structure, the blue tunnel toward the back was empty. And from inside it, I heard that same scratchy, playful voice. Pick. I didn't answer. A beat of silence. Then, closer now. Pick-a-boo. Something moved in the shadows at the far end. Too fast, too jerky. His face slid into view. Not popped into view. Slid like his head was being pulled forward by something behind him. Skin pale and smudged with dirt. Hair thin and uneven, like clumps of it had been pulled out. Eyes wrong in a way I can't explain. Too round, too glossy, like the plastic eyes on a doll. He didn't crawl toward me. He just twitched in place, head jerking side to side, his mouth stretched into a smile. Boo! That was all it took. I screamed so loud the parents below looked up, and I scrambled down the nearest slide, practically tumbling out. Daniel tried to convince me it was an older kid messing with me. The staff checked. No one was in the tunnel. After that, I started having dreams. I'd be in the play place alone, the rest of the restaurant pitch black, and the tunnels would stretch on forever. Somewhere ahead, I'd hear the voice. Always the same game. Always the same order. Pick, pick-a, pick-a-boo. When I didn't answer, something would grab my ankle and yank. I'd wake up screaming. Mom thought it was just stress. She said kids see things when they're overtired. Daniel stopped taking me to McDonald's for a while, but then, in late December, he had no choice. Dad was working an overnight, Mom got called in, and Daniel's girlfriend was meeting him there. That night, the snow outside made the parking lot glow pale blue. The restaurant was almost empty. And when Daniel's back was turned, I found myself standing at the entrance to the play place again, staring at the dark mouth of the tunnel. The thing about fear is that sometimes it pulls you closer instead of pushing you away. I crawled inside. The voice didn't make me wait. Pick. My breath fogged in the air. It was cold in there. I'm not playing, I whispered. Silence. Then so close I felt it in my ear. You already are. That was when I saw his hands. They came first, curling over the edge of the tunnel ahead. Too long, too thin. Skin so pale the blue plastic reflected off it. His head followed, snapping forward as if pulled by a wire. That same too wide smile splitting his face. He rushed at me without crawling, like he was being dragged. And I screamed, kicking backward until I fell down the slide. The staff checked again. Nothing. After that night, I stopped going to McDonald's. Mom thought I'd just grown out of it. I didn't tell her about the scratches I sometimes found on my arms when I woke up, or the way I'd catch movement in doorways when I was alone. Years passed. Then last summer at 23, I drove past the Sycamore Road McDonald's on my way home from work. It was smaller than I remembered, the colors sun-bleached, the play place half empty. I almost kept driving, but something, maybe morbid curiosity, made me pull in. Inside, the smell was the same: fry oil, ketchup, that faint plastic scent. I bought a coffee and sat near the play place window. It didn't take long. From deep inside the tunnel came a faint, high-pitched, scratchy whisper. Pick. I didn't wait for the rest. I walked out, coffee in hand, heart pounding, and didn't look back. Because I know this much. He never leaves. He just waits for someone new to answer. Story 8. I wasn't even planning to leave the house that night. It was one of those early October evenings where the air smells faintly of rain, but the sky hasn't decided whether to deliver it. The day had slipped by in a kind of quiet blur: gray clouds, muted sunlight, and a light wind that whispered through the maple trees out front. The streets had that damp look, even though it hadn't rained for hours. I'd spent most of the day half buried under a throw blanket, scrolling endlessly through Instagram and watching reruns of a cooking competition I didn't even like that much. My parents were out of town for the weekend, driving up to Cleveland to visit my uncle, who just had surgery. They'd left that morning with the usual checklist: lock the doors, don't have people over, no deliveries after dark. I was 17, old enough to be trusted with the house, but not quite old enough to feel like it was mine. By 7:30, the living room felt claustrophobic. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, pressing. I needed some noise, some movement, some reason to get out from under that blanket. That's when my phone buzzed. Lexi. McDonald's run? Me. Kinda lazy NGL. Lexi. Don't make me sit with my cousin alone. He's been talking about chicken McNuggets for an hour. I smirked. Lexi lived 2 streets over, and the McDonald's on 5th Street was maybe a 10-minute walk. It wasn't in the bad part of Brookford. Honestly, there wasn't really a bad part. But Mom still didn't like me walking after dark. I called her anyway, more out of habit than permission-seeking. It's dark already, she said on the second ring. It's barely 8, I countered. And it's just 5th Street. I'll text when I get there and when I head back. A pause, then reluctantly, all right, keep your phone on. Brookford's 5th Street McDonald's was the same as every other one in America. Fluorescent light pouring out onto wet pavement, the smell of fries drifting into the parking lot, the faint hum of a soda machine somewhere inside. Lexi spotted me before I even got to the counter. She waved me over to a corner booth by the window. Her cousin Tyler was already halfway through a large fries, BBQ sauce on his hoodie. Took you long enough, she teased. You're lucky I like you, I said, sliding into the seat. We ordered quarter-pounder meal for me, McChicken for her, 20-piece nuggets for Tyler, and for the first time all day, the heaviness in my chest eased a little. We gossiped about school, laughed about a teacher's weird obsession with Civil War trivia, and debated which fast food fries were objectively the best. That's when I noticed him. He was standing near the trash bin by the exit, late 50s maybe, though the deep lines in his face made him look older. His clothes hung off him, stained work jacket, ripped jeans stiff with dirt, a tangled beard, eyes like dull glass marbles. He moved slow, as if each step took effort. When he stopped by our table, I thought maybe he was looking for an empty seat. Instead, he pointed at the untouched half of my quarter-pounder. If you're not going to eat that, his voice was hoarse, gravelly. Could I have it? I froze. The question hung in the air heavier than it should have. I was going to take it home, I said after a beat. He didn't move. His gaze didn't shift. No aggression, just a hollow pleading that made my stomach twist. Lexi reached for her purse. We can get you something. I waved her off without thinking. You don't have to, Lex. Then, God knows why, I looked back at him and said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, why don't you get a job instead of begging? Something in his face crumpled. Not anger, not surprise, just this quiet defeat. Sorry, he murmured. He turned away, shuffling toward the soda fountain. I flagged down an employee and said, "He's bothering us." 2 minutes later, a lanky security guard in his early 20s walked over. I heard their conversation. Low, sharp. The man tried to explain, but the guard grabbed his arm, steering him toward the door. Outside, I saw the man stumble. His face hit the curb with a sickening crack. He sat up slowly, spitting something red into his hand. A tooth. Lexi stared at me. That was harsh. He shouldn't have come to our table, I said, more defensive than I meant to sound. We stayed another half hour. Tyler got a McFlurry. By the time we stood to leave, the earlier tension had mostly evaporated. Lexi offered me a ride. Her dad was picking them up. I declined. It was a short walk, and I didn't feel like making small talk with her dad. The night air was colder now, the streets mostly empty. A few cars passed, a single cyclist with a blinking rear light. I kept one earbud in, music low, just enough to soften the silence. I was halfway down Sycamore Avenue when something slammed into the back of my head. Hard. My knees buckled. I reached up, my fingers coming away sticky. Warm. Blood. Dazed, I turned. He was there. The man from Macdonald's. Jacket darker now. Maybe from rain. Maybe from something else. His mouth was bloody, one tooth missing. But his eyes? God, his eyes were alive in a way they hadn't been inside. Wild. "Hey, what the hell?" My voice shook. He didn't answer. He started toward me faster than I thought he could move. His hands clamped down on my shoulders and he shook me, hard enough to rattle my teeth. "Help!" I screamed. "Somebody help me!" His breath hit my face in a sour, alcoholic, rotting. I tried to pull free, but his grip was iron. He screamed something incoherent, spit spraying my cheek. I sobbed, I'm sorry, please stop." Then he shoved me. I hit the pavement, skinning my palms. When I scrambled to my feet, he wasn't chasing. He was just standing there in the glow of the streetlight, watching me, shoulders heaving, that dry, rasping laugh scraping through the air. I ran. I bolted the front door behind me and collapsed against it, shaking so hard my teeth hurt. I called Mom, but all that came out were jagged breaths and broken phrases. He followed me. He hit me. Blood. It took them an hour to get home. The police came. They took a statement, asked for a description, and drove me to the ER mild concussion. No stitches. They never found him. It's been 13 years. I'm 30 now. Brooklyn apartment, steady job, fiancé. But every time I pass someone sleeping rough, something in me tenses. I buy them food now, sometimes coffee, sometimes a sandwich, because I remember what happened when I didn't. I remember the look in his eyes when I turned him into something else, something that still lives in the corner of my memory, under a flickering streetlight on Sycamore Avenue. And I still wonder, late at night, if all of it could have been avoided. If I had just given him the damn burger. Story 9. I've always been the kind of uncle who says yes when other adults say no. Yes to ice cream before dinner. Yes to just one more round of Mario Kart. Yes to skipping the boring museum exhibit in favor of the arcade across the street. My younger brother's kid, Tyler, figured this out early. I don't have kids myself, so I think he saw me as some kind of loophole, an adult who wasn't really a grown-up. Tyler's mom, Claire, is my brother's ex. She's a nurse, single, and runs a pretty tight ship. She's good at it too. Bedtime means bedtime, homework before screen time. Because I said so as the final word. Me? I'm a high school English teacher, which means I get summers off and live in a little 2-bedroom apartment in a sleepy Massachusetts town called Brookridge. Summers for me are coffee until 11 a.m., long walks, and saying yes when someone calls asking for help. Last month, that call came from Claire. "Listen, Adam," she said over the phone, "I know it's short notice, but I've got this conference in Phoenix. 4 nights. Tyler's got baseball practice, and honestly, I just don't want to leave him with a sitter he barely knows. Would you be able—" "Yes," I said before she could finish. She laughed. "You don't even want to know the dates?" "Doesn't matter. I miss the kid. Send him over." Tyler showed up that Sunday evening with his duffel bag, baseball glove, and the same lopsided grin my brother used to have when we were kids. He was 11 now, tall for his age, awkward elbows, and a mix of confidence and uncertainty in his voice. We had a good week. Baseball practice in the afternoons. Pokemon battles at night. We went for ice cream 3 times. I let him stay up late on Wednesday to watch the Goonies for the first time. He asked 100 questions about the 80s, most of them starting with, "Did people really?" By Friday, I was already a little sad knowing he'd be going home the next morning. So I told him we'd end the week with burgers and fries. His eyes lit up instantly. "Can we go to McDonald's? The one with the big red slide inside?" That location had been there since I was a kid. The slide was long gone, but I knew the place. The cracked vinyl seats, the buzzing soda machine, the smell of fryer oil in the air. "Sure," I said. "One last hurrah before you go back to strict Aunt Claire rules." We got there around 4 p.m. on Friday. It was busier than I expected. Parents wrangling toddlers, high school kids in clumps, a couple of older guys nursing small coffees. The counter line was slow, but Tyler didn't care. He was glued to the menu, deciding between a Big Mac and a 10-piece nugget. "I'm getting a Happy Meal," he announced suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. "You're 11. Aren't you too cool for a Happy Meal?" He grinned. "Only if it comes with a toy." We ordered quarter pounder for me, Happy Meal for him, large fries to split. The cashier, a girl who looked maybe 17, handed us the receipt and told us to wait at the side. When the tray came out, I scanned for an empty table. That's when Tyler tugged my sleeve. "There," he said, pointing to a corner booth. I saw it, mostly empty, except for a man sitting on one side with a small coffee in front of him. Mid-40s maybe, pale, thin. He wore a navy windbreaker zipped all the way up, even though it was warm outside. His hair was greasy, combed forward in a way that didn't quite hide a scar on his temple. "Someone's sitting there," I said quietly. "There's still room," Tyler replied. The man looked up and gave a slight nod. "Go ahead, plenty of space." His voice was soft, almost polite. I hesitated, some instinct telling me to keep walking, but the place was packed, and he didn't seem threatening. So we sat. Tyler dug into his Happy Meal immediately, pulling out the toy first like it was Christmas morning. It was a small plastic car, bright orange with oversized wheels. "Cool," I said. "What's it do?" The man across from us leaned forward slightly, smiling. "I remember when the toys used to be better," he said. "More special. They don't make them like they used to." Tyler, polite as ever, asked, "Why not?" The man's smile widened, just a little too much. "Some people thought they were wrong." Before I could ask what he meant, he reached into his jacket pocket. There was a faint crinkle like thick paper. He pulled out a small brown paper bag and set it gently on the table between us. "Want to see something?" he asked. I felt my shoulders tense. "What is it?" I asked. He ignored me and opened the bag. Inside was a toy, I guess. But it wasn't anything like the cheap molded plastic from the Happy Meal. It was about the size of a baseball, shaped like a jellyfish. The dome was translucent, with colors shifting in the light like an oil slick. Hanging beneath it were limp, rubbery tentacles. And the face, because it had a face, was human. Not cartoon human, realistic human. The eyes were small and glassy, the kind that seemed to follow you. The mouth was a simple stitched curve, too precise, like it had been sewn shut. Tyler's hand froze halfway to his fries. "That's weird," he said quietly. The man's voice softened. "Go ahead. Touch it. Feels like nothing else." "No thanks," I said, sharper than I meant to. "It's just a toy," the man replied, tilting his head like he was confused. "Kids love toys." "He doesn't need to touch anything that came out of your pocket," I said, keeping my eyes on him. The man studied me for a long moment. "You think I'm dangerous?" he asked. "I think you need to leave," I said. He didn't argue. He just smiled faintly, put the jellyfish back in the bag and stood. As he walked away, he glanced over his shoulder. "Some toys. Stick with you," he said. Tyler didn't eat much after that. I told him we'd finish in the car. I was just unlocking the driver's side when something slammed against the window. It was him. His palm was flat against the glass, his face inches away, expression blank. Tyler gasped, scrambling back in his seat. The man slowly reached into his bag, pulled out the jellyfish toy, and, keeping his eyes on us, ran his tongue slowly from the bottom to the top. I started the engine. "Get the hell away from us!" I shouted through the glass. He didn't move until I shifted into reverse and peeled out of the lot. That night, Tyler barely spoke. He kept glancing at my apartment windows. I left the TV on, but he didn't watch it. The next morning, I drove him to the airport to meet Claire. He didn't tell her what happened, just hugged her and stayed close. I pulled her aside and told her everything. She went pale. I called the Brookridge police later that day. They listened politely, but told me the same thing. Creepy, yes. Illegal, not really. It's been 3 weeks. I've driven past that McDonald's twice just to see. No sign of him. But every now and then, I see a kid walk out holding a Happy Meal and a toy that looks just a little too detailed, a little too real. If you ever see a jellyfish with a human face in a paper bag, don't touch it. Don't let your kid touch it. Just leave. Story 10. I never thought I'd end up as the McDonald's guy in the clown suit. When I was a kid, Ronald McDonald was just another strange mascot on TV. I wasn't scared of him, but I sure wasn't lining up for hugs either. Fast forward to 2022, I was 24, living in a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in Fairview Crossing, Illinois. The kind of place where the traffic lights blink yellow after midnight because there's no point wasting electricity. College hadn't worked out. My part-time graphic design classes ended when I couldn't keep up with tuition. My cousin rented me the smaller room cheap, and I took the first job I could get. McDonald's, just off Route 47. I figured I'd do a few months until something better came along. A few months turned into almost 2 years. Most days I worked the fryer line or the register. It wasn't glamorous, but I knew the rhythm. Breakfast rush, midday lull, dinner chaos, late night drunks. Then one weekend in April, my manager Carl, a big guy with a permanent coffee stain on his polo, asked me to cover for someone. Carl: "Harper, you busy Saturday?" Me: "If I say yes, does that get me out of work?" Carl: "Nope. Look, our Ronald for the kid's birthday event quit. You're tall, suit will fit. All you do is wave, hand out balloons, smile for pictures." It paid an extra $50, so I agreed. That Saturday, I put on the yellow jumpsuit, red wig, oversized shoes. The heat inside that costume was like standing in a greenhouse. But the kids laughed, parents took pictures, and it was over in 3 hours. Easy money. After that, I became Carl's go-to event Ronald. Whenever they needed one for promotions or birthdays, I got the call. I didn't love it, but extra cash was extra cash. It was a Thursday in late October, one of those nights where the air's cold enough to make your fingertips ache. We'd been doing a spooky season promo all week, which meant I was in the suit for most of my evening shift. By 9:45 p.m., the lobby was empty. Drive-through was slow. I was leaning in the back near the mop sink, ready to clock out, when Maya from the front counter came in. Maya: "Hey, there's a woman asking for you." Me: "Me? Like me, or Ronald me?" Maya: "She said the clown. Been standing outside for a while. Kinda weird." I figured it was some mom whose kid missed the earlier event and wanted a quick picture. I sighed, adjusted the wig, and stepped out. Through the glass doors, I saw her. She was facing away from the store, looking up at the night sky. Thin frame, pale blue coat hanging loose, hair in a long braid down her back. She didn't move until I opened the door. Me: "Ma'am, you were looking for me?" She turned slowly, smile stretching too wide for the rest of her face. Her eyes didn't lock onto mine right away, like she was focusing from far away. Woman: "My son wanted to meet you. He loves Ronald. He's been waiting." I glanced around. The parking lot was empty except for a single silver sedan under a far light. Me: "Is he in the car?" Woman: "No. He's home. Not far. Just a quick photo. I'll pay you." Something in her voice made me want to say no, but she said, "I'll pay you," and my rent was overdue. Me: "How far is it?" Woman: 10 minutes. Walking." I told Maya I had to take care of a quick side gig and clocked out. The woman waited silently by the door, hands in her coat pockets. We walked through town, past the closed hardware store, the library, the empty post office. Her footsteps were nearly silent. Mine crunched on the sidewalk. She didn't speak, and I didn't know what to say. After 10 minutes, the houses thinned. Streetlights ended. We were on gravel now. Me. So, your son's excited, huh? Woman, after a pause. He's been waiting a long time. I started to feel uneasy. When we reached a rusted iron gate, I realized where we were. Fairview Memorial Cemetery. Me. Wait, you live here? Woman, smiling again. No, but he does. My stomach tightened. Me. You said he was home. Woman. This is home. Now. She pushed the gate open with a groan of metal. Cold wind slipped through the headstones. She led me to a small, clean grave near the back. A few plastic toys sat at the base, along with faded flowers. The headstone read, Jacob Lane, 2015 to 2022. Our little joker. She crouched, brushed leaves from the stone. Woman. Jacob loved Ronald. Will you tell him a joke? I stared at her. The painted smile on my face felt grotesque, but something in her eyes, desperate, hollow, made me play along. I told a dumb joke about a hamburger and fries. Silence. Then, it was faint, but I swear I heard it. A child's giggle, short, quick, real. I froze. She looked at me with wide, tear-shining eyes. Then she laughed too. Not like an adult, but high-pitched, mimicking a child's voice. The sound echoed between the stones. My skin prickled. Me, I should go. Woman. He wants a picture. Me. No, Woman, suddenly sharp. He's not done with you. She grabbed my glove sleeve. Her grip was surprisingly strong. I pulled away, backing up toward the gate. Her voice followed me, rising into the cold air. Woman. Every child wants a picture with Ronald, don't they? I didn't run, but I walked fast all the way back to town. My clown shoes tripped me twice. 2 days later, I quit. I couldn't put the suit back on. Maya told me the woman never came back, but some nights I'd wake to faint giggling outside my window, just once each night, always brief. Always gone by the time I looked. 3 months later, the Fairview Gazette ran a small piece. Local woman arrested after repeated trespassing in Fairview Memorial Cemetery. Marilyn Lane, 42, reportedly approached several fast food workers in recent months, attempting to bring them to her late son's grave for photographs. Jacob Lane died in a bicycle accident last year. The last paragraph mentioned photographs found at the grave. Most were water damage. One was clear, a man in a red wig and yellow jumpsuit standing beside Jacob's headstone, holding a balloon. His smile painted on, but his eyes wide and afraid. I don't remember taking that picture, but it was me. And behind me, just at the edge of the frame, a small boy was smiling. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, I'll see you again with another horror story. Until then,